Hello and welcome to SARI, the Summit on Responsible Investment online series. Today with me, I am going to be joined by Siri Genik of Bridge. Siri has spent 25 years working on major capital projects as well as with juniors around the world in both natural resources and infrastructure. Siri is a subject matter expert in sustainability and ESG, stakeholder engagement, as well as strategic supply chain. Siri is the principal and founder of Bridge, supports boards and leadership as well as project teams. Prior to running her own business, Siri worked with BHP Canada as head of project services, as well as with Glencore Xstrata in Australia, Malaysia, and New Caledonia, and other major companies in the industry. Siri currently sits on the board of Northern Dynasty Minerals, as well as Exploits Discovery Corp. Siri is also a member of the Board of Prospectors and Development Association of Canada, also known as BDAC, and a member of the Sustainability as well as the Lands and Regulations Committees. Siri is a lawyer, as well as a qualified mediator. She is perfectly fluent in English, French, and Spanish. Siri recently received the 2019 Distinguished Lecturer Award for CSR from the Canadian Institute of Mining. She lectures in a number of universities across Canada, Australia, and South America. She has been a panelist and a speaker at numerous conferences around the globe on strategic leadership and meaningful stakeholder engagement, as well as supply chain. And we're so pleased to have her here today. Hello and welcome, Siri. It's so nice to see you on the Summit on Responsible Investment podcast today. The last time we spoke with you was a few years back when Phil Shum hosted you on the Mining Over Canada podcast. And I know that you guys spoke a lot about ESG, among other things, but of course, I'm sure many things have evolved in that time. So for those of us who are new to this world, I'd like to start by revisiting the basics of ESG. So what are the key component pillars of each? Environmental, social, and governance.
Yes, of course. Good morning, Melissa. It's great to be back. It's hard to believe it's been 3 years. It just goes by so fast. And I think ESG has gone just as fast. So when I spoke with Philip 3 years ago, I wouldn't say ESG was in its infancy because it's been there for a while. But we were talking about ABCs, the sort of almost alphabet soup. And ESG started as the basis for some kind of a reporting system that our industry wanted to put in place. So we're talking about mining, but it works across all industries, actually, to be able to account for behaviors around environment, social, and governance. Since then, that acronym has taken on a huge broad brush-based kind of meaning, which is unfortunate because everybody sees it in a different way. So I like your question. Let's go back to basics. ESG is about being a responsible mining company, about being responsible, a good corporate behavior. And it really will depend at what stage your company, your mining company is at to define what the E, the S, and the G is. So I'm going to start a little bit backwards with the G, because that is the framework. So the G is the governance. And whether you're just starting, you're an exploration company, you're laying claims or you're filing claims. Good governance means you have a framework for basically good behavior, accountability. As an organization, public organization, but even private, you are accountable to your shareholders. So you want to show your shareholders and the people who have believed in you and invested that you understand what good corporate behavior looks like. So if you're in the very early days, you might be drilling, you might be blasting. You need to understand that you have an impact and how you deal with that impact. So guidelines, they can be very high level policies about good behavior, health and safety, absolutely primary. And depending where you're working in the world, but always abiding by the laws, abiding by regulations. Having a good board. So a good board doesn't mean a bunch of, well, you hope that everybody's going to be friends, but you hope you've chosen a number of people that can contribute to your organization at the stage at which it is at. So different specializations, geologists perhaps, accountants, finance experts, lawyers, sustainability. You don't need necessarily one of each, but at the stage at which you are, make sure you have the right people and a diverse number of people. So not just women and men, which of course is important, but different mindsets, different experiences, um, and not always necessarily from mining. We're running into AI, we're running into technology innovation, and those skill sets come from different people with different backgrounds. So again, depending on where you are, the right people to help give you purpose and vision. And that governance framework, so health and safety, starts, of course, I'll then go backwards again with the S. So it's social, but social starts with your own people. So making sure, even if you're just drilling, even if you're just blasting, making sure all the health and safety protocols are in place. If you're using suppliers or service providers, make sure they have health and safety provisions, or if not, that they sign on to yours. There's no excuse for anybody getting hurt, not today. And unfortunately, we still see accidents, and often it's because people are not careful or want to move quickly or jump a few steps. So, health and safety, safety, safety for your people, but also understanding your environment. So I'm talking landscape. So zoom out. Even again, if you're early days, exploring, developing, where are you? And not just sort of in the very spot that you're hoping to drill or the very area, but zoom out. Understand who are your neighbors. The word stakeholders. And I've heard many people tell me, well, I'm in the middle of nowhere, there's nobody there, in the middle of the desert or in the middle of, the mountainside. I haven't seen a soul for 3 days. But those lands belong to somebody. And it's important to find out as early as possible, even if there doesn't seem to be anybody. So the social is more than just, well, we'll go to the community. It's understanding where sort of you're not landing on the moon. You're in an environment, and our whole world is properly laid out. So we need to understand. And are there people we should be introducing ourselves to? So rather than showing up with a drilling crew or a blasting crew or both, or whomever, is there where's the closest municipality? Is there a mayor? It doesn't have to be necessarily an indigenous community. It could be a business community. It could but until you look for it and try to understand it, you won't know. So that exercise, that S, is find out, demystify the area, and broader than just the sort of 2x4 where you think or you hope maybe there is a great asset to be discovered and developed. And the E is something actually we've been aware of for a very long time. So E for environment. So we had it with HSEC, health, safety, environment, and community. It is our footprint, our impact. So just even stepping and wanting to drill, which is a small hope, that alone, mining by definition is not sustainable. We're disrupting. So we have to do it right. And it seems like a bit of a strange comment, but we have the technology today. We have the ability to do things the right way. So it means a little bit of planning up front. It means understanding, are there any watersheds close by? And again, I've heard many people say, Siri, it's as dry as a bone. There isn't even a dead leaf. There's nothing there. And sure enough, you don't have to go very far to find some kind of little bug or some kind of little bird or some kind of biodiversity that we are not experts in, but can be impacted. And at the same time, we think of water and air. So besides just maybe watersheds and or grass or trees, which of course are important, biodiversity, think water, think air. So again, how many times have I heard, "Sir, there's no water. I promise you, dry as a bone." Yeah, but underneath there is. Our planet is the geology of our planet is such there are water tables. So maybe we're not drilling deep the first time, but maybe we are. What our understand what the impacts can be, and or be aware that you may need to in the not too distant future understand. And the same thing with air. So every time we blast, every time we drive down a road, we raise dust. And I know it seems innocuous, but these movements are impactful, not necessarily always bad, but they can have an impact. And so it's about being aware. So ESG is just common sense, um, and acting responsibly rather than just showing up and doing our thing and disappearing and not even thinking about anything else. So I think that is the big message. This goes beyond reports, this goes beyond acronyms and terminology. It's really acting as a responsible corporation.
Okay. And how would you compare it to, say, CSR? How does ESG differ from traditional CSR?
So I don't even know that. So it's an evolution. It's sort of like I said, we started with HSE, then HSEC, then CS. All these acronyms keep creeping out. CSR. So CSR is corporate social responsibility. And that's basically about being a responsible corporation. So if we look at the G part, that would fit in my perspective in that G, being having the right policies, even if they're one or two, proper health and safety guidelines, um, proper ethics, working with suppliers the right way, being careful of EDI, diversity, equity, inclusion. But that's the background. ESG is taking it yet one step further and breaking down, well, what does it mean to be a responsible corporation? And here are the three main components, which are E, S, and G. And so it's, if you want, and I don't like to say it's a breakdown, but it's we are continuously drilling down deeper into the proper of an understanding of what being responsible and accountable as mining companies means. So
Right.
it
So
is
that it's
it's a
not just a
continuing.
title,
No.
right? That you're getting into the nitty-gritty of what that actually means in practice.
And you have to be able to explain it. So I think as we develop as mining companies, people will be asked. So investors ask. You see many of the banks, many of the major investors have tear sheets. Okay, Melissa or Siri, what does your company do? And they're not looking for a 500-page report and a sustainability report. They're looking for you as if you're the CEO or the person, one of the senior leadership team, to be able to say, we understand that we have an impact, and we're at this stage of our development. And right now, at this stage, this is where we're at. So this is what we do for the E, this is what we do for the S, and this is what we're doing for the G. So it's about having a plan, an action plan, and delivering to it. That is what investors will look for, and that's what it means. It's no longer just saying, yeah, we do all the right things. It's not
Yeah,
saying, yeah, we've
it's not
hired,
much
yeah,
different perhaps than having, as a company, having a strong mandate.
exactly. It's
You know,
absolutely, so the mandate comes, your shareholders are looking for a return on their investment. So let's be clear, this is not about, and I mean this with a lot of, it's not about being a greenie or it. Of course, it is about doing the right thing, but it's not about waving a green flag. And we'll get into greenwashing in a little bit. It's really about doing business the right way to make sure that as board directors, if that's, or the senior leadership, you have a duty to your shareholders. You have an accountability to deliver results. What has shifted a little bit is that from instant results like the next quarter, the next second quarter, we're now talking about mid to long term results, because it takes time, as you know, to develop mines, to build them properly, and take all the right steps. There's a lot of permitting involved. So you have to go by steps. You need a schedule, and you also need a budget. So it's about, how am I as an organization addressing each one of those steps at the right time? It doesn't mean being all things to all people. And in fact, if somebody has a 500-page or 300, 100-page sustainability report in the development stage, I'd be very worried. Their money's going to the wrong place. So it's really about balancing the needs of our landscape, our environment, with a capital E, and all our stakeholders, as well as with the shareholders, who, of course, believe in you and have invested in you because they know you're a good corporate citizen and they want to see results, whether it's nickel or copper or gold, lithium. That is the balance, and that's the G. People sometimes forget it, but that G is making sure that you have a good business plan, and a good business plan, and I'll probably say it way too many times, is good common sense. And again, if you don't do it right, the fact that you're not doing it the right way will slow you down. So what slowing down means that you have to invest more money because it'll take you longer to get to where you want to go. So again, it's about doing the right thing for the right reasons, and balancing out good shareholder return with good return for the landscape in which you're operating.
Yeah, can you expand on that a little bit? Like why is it so important for, say, a mining company to ensure that these practices are a part of their business plan? How does that influence their success rates? But just before we get into, say, on the other side, the investors.
If I'm investing money in an organization, I want to make money. It's because I believe in you, but I also, if we're absolutely honest, we want to make money. So I want to make sure that the company is taking all the steps in its power and with its skill set to make sure I get that return. And to do that, you need to de-risk a project. I mean, sustainability is truly only de-risking. So I've got a schedule. I want to reach these milestones in this timeline. This is my budget. What can prevent me from getting there? Pure risk assessment. You ask yourself. So of course, if you don't have the financing, that's a problem. If you don't have the technology, that's a problem. But if you don't have the permits, and what do you need to get those permits? And how do you get them in a timely manner? So of course, there are governmental regulations, but in many cases, to get those permits, you need to have done baseline studies. You have to interface with communities. So again, even if you're really stubborn and you may not necessarily believe in the value, in the financial value of ESG, at the end of the day, you want those permits, you want to move forward. And every day that you're slowed down is the number of dollars that come out of your treasury to get to that next step. So proper de-risking of a project means I understand what can slow me down, or what can, on the flip side, what can help me accelerate. So understanding the community, understanding the environment, having demystified all these pieces means that when I take the steps I need to comply with regulations, bylaws, I'm halfway there. So there's a certain element of proactivity, simple de-risking. It's not, I don't mean to be cynical, but it's not rocket science. Does that make sense? So as an investor, you want to make sure that this company is doing the things not to accelerate recklessly, but to follow the path and to take every step that is in their power to ensure getting the permits for the right reasons.
Right. Now, is it in your observation, is it an experienced investor that knows to look for these things when investing in some of these companies?
Excuse me. I think we're seeing more and more investment companies, private equity companies, having sustainability experts come on board to help guide them. There's so many guidelines. There's so many, and things evolve extremely quickly. Again, if we look at where we were 3 years ago to today,
right?
I don't think anybody necessarily. I think they were starting to think about it, but now, wherever you look, the questions around sustainability are as important as liquidity, experience of the team, the geology, etc. So, I'm often also asked or consulted and said, well, can you look at company X and tell us? So you do a due diligence.
Right. So even if an investor themselves isn't necessarily massively educated, they can look to people like yourself to help them understand the landscape of that company.
And ask the right questions. It's like anything else. It's knowing the questions to ask.
Right.
Because it moves, even for people in the field like myself and all my colleagues. Every time you wake up in the morning, there's a new bylaw, there's a new regulation, there's a new policy, there's a new standard. And because the world is very small, in spite of what we think, and the geopolitics are shifting so incredibly quickly, not just abroad, but even at home, understanding where your product could eventually end up is important as well. And even though it seems like early days, that the footprint of your supply chain has become, it comes under the microscope. Climate change brings more rain, more heat, more cold, more movement in our earth, earthquakes. So now we still have to start thinking of designing our infrastructure in mining, even though, for juniors, it's maybe very early days, but you have to keep questioning every step. So I think that's the big difference from before. And it's like, okay, well, now you can't say there's no climate change. I mean, for those who still may want to say that, whatever it is, it's raining more, it's hotter, it's colder, there are more earthquakes. So our systems need to be climate change proof, or we have to
So
start thinking.
would you say just in the 3 years that we were referencing here, that climate change is one of the biggest parts of the evolution of ESG in the last few years?
I would certainly think so. Going down that, we're continuously adding on to that detail. Absolutely. I think there are two areas. So climate change and carbon footprint. So you're going to, we didn't, if you listen to the interview with Philip, we didn't talk about climate change, carbon footprint, greenhouse gas emissions. And the other one is circular economy. So, and renewable energy. So these are even more detailed breakdown of that E component.
Siri, just outside of the tangible benefits that you're seeing outside of, like, say, de-risking, as you mentioned before, what other benefits are you seeing from both sides, for the companies and also for their stakeholders?
So it's a great question. I think what sustainability or ESG brings to the table is really encouraging mining companies to be the accelerator they can be, and at all levels. So you're seeing, because we need to do things better, but we're not in the field. So people say, well, Siri, I'm a miner. I'm not a AI scientist or a technology, and they're absolutely right. But universities today around the world, certainly in Canada, are looking to find partnerships in the mining industry to help develop new and better ideas, again, around safety, but around processes, how to build a better whole, a safer whole. How do, that we talk a lot about systems. So the ability to do a lot of work remote is important, but that doesn't happen, out of the blue. You need to figure out how to connect. So this approach to sustainability forces us to use our brains to develop, to innovate. It also helps us build relationships, build cooperation. So you've read or you've seen with Indigenous communities. We're talking about Indigenous royalty companies, which are so exciting. These investors are investing Indigenous communities for their communities, so they can develop and they can grow and they can own, and so the industry is an accelerator to facilitate, and because nobody can do anything alone, we now are able to draw on skill sets that we didn't know in the environment. I mean, the Indigenous communities have been there way before any of us, and just to hear a noise, we'll say, "Oh, that's right," or "That's wrong." We should focus on that, and those who do really, really well.
Right, those knowledge bases are so helpful.
Absolutely.
From either side.
We grow because we learn, and we learn because we have these sources of information and knowledge. Universities, research and development, obviously the governments, NRCan, all the provincial, the municipal governments, working with the municipalities, working with the schools. Everybody, quote unquote, hates mining until they pull out their 3 tablets, their 2 smartphones, and everything
right.
else in between.
That's right.
helping kids in school understand that no, mining is not bad. Mining can be done the wrong way, but it can be done the right way. So what does that mean? What does that look like? So social media is an important and a powerful tool, and
Mm.
something in mining we need to continuously do better is learn how to communicate. So we've, I think we're doing better, but we have to use that space, that social media space. I mean, like something like this. It's not complicated, but we need to do it, and it has to be accessible to everybody in simple language. There's enough scientists and technicians who will take over at some point, but helping people even understand how minerals and metals help in hospitals or with
Mm.
education, or so that is on us, our industry, our stock exchanges, all the people who are involved. We are accountable. We have the ability to access information that others don't. So as almost a human race, it sounds a little bit like motherhood, but it is on us. I think you asked me a question a while, or somebody, about stewardship. As
Mhm. Yes.
miners, our first responsibility is to be stewards of the earth. And again, I sound like my grandmother maybe, but we can, because we know how to. But we can't keep it for ourselves and go, well, we're miners, we know, leave, don't, I've been doing this for 50 years, go away and leave me alone. We have to share. And the more you share that passion, that knowledge with kids, I mean, and or populations that may not understand but are not stupid, they just are uninformed. And
So,
you bring
to
it,
your
yeah.
point about that accessibility, like what would you suggest to, say, the listeners of this podcast that want to learn more about current trends in ESG, sustainability, how they can support those efforts, even as an investor?
There are major consulting companies that do very, very good work. There's other consultants, perhaps smaller, people like myself and a number of others that are excellent. We can help demystify. But again, if you're just a simple investor, you want to invest a couple of $1,000s, or even you're talking to your bank or your financial advisor, help, make sure you ask those questions. What are they doing? And if people brush you off, go find the answer somewhere else, because nobody should brush you off if you say, well, how do I know you're not polluting the water around you? Which would be a very simple question. And if they
Mm.
can't answer that, find somebody who can. And if nobody can, invest somewhere else.
Siri, you mentioned earlier in our conversation the term greenwashing. So
Yes.
that's the opposite of walking the talk. Can you explain that for us?
So that is I think the latest trendy word. So in sustainability, we've seen this evolution of sexy, trendy words from ESG, sustainability. So now the latest one is greenwashing. Um, it's come to the forefront for a number of reasons. I'll give you the legal one first. Being a lawyer, that's certainly something that caught my attention, and probably everybody's. Bill C-59, which you may have heard of, is an act to amend the Competition Act, so federal legislation, and it passed. I think it was June 20th, this year, 2024, but it hasn't been, so none of the regulations are in place yet. But the purpose is to identify companies, not just in mining but across the board, that that don't walk the talk. So we're 100% renewable energy, we're eco-friendly, all these statements, whether it's on something you buy at a grocery store or a piece of clothing, paint, you name it. You see where these statements everywhere now.
Right.
And so the Competition Bureau and the federal government have decided to come down hard, and I think it's a good thing. I think they have some work to do yet to define. But if you cannot prove, so you've got a sustainability report, it's quite impressive, and you make statements on your website that you're completely aligned with, let's say, the Sustainable Development Goals, which are a set of uh, United Nations targets for sustainable behavior, and you make all these statements all over the place. Um, I can go to or technically, um, if it's going to be set up the way I believe it will be, is that you can make a complaint to the Competition Bureau, as they'll have a greenwashing department, which will probably call
Mm-hmm.
something else, and it'll be on the company. So normally, if you complain, the burden of proof is on you to say, you, Melissa, I think you're lying, and it's on me to prove it.
Uh,
In this case, if I complain about your mining company, you will have to prove to me and to the Competition Bureau why the statements you made are accurate. So it's
so
it's a reverse of
it's
and
major accountability then on these
huge,
companies.
and it can be very expensive, because even if you're Canadian, listed in a Canadian on a Canadian stock exchange, but you're somewhere else in the world, and you're found to be in breach of this act or the regulations or the bylaws, whichever, you can be fined up to 3%, I believe, of your annual revenues, like worldwide. So it can be a very big number.
It's interesting
Um,
because it might make it very motivating for, a new company to ensure that these things are in place before they even get to that stage. And then on a global stage, it makes Canadian companies appealing to global investors if they know that they're meeting these standards and these accountabilities.
because we're back to transparency. And again, the world is not asking you to be. It's impossible to be perfect. I mean, even as we exhale, as we breathe, we exhale CO2. So the concept of carbon neutral, when people say we're totally carbon neutral, I'm like, in what is that?
Mm,
My glasses are plastic somewhere, somehow, somebody. But it means that if I say that we're making efforts, that we're walking that walk, that I can demonstrate that my company, here are the steps I'm taking to reduce my greenhouse gas. So those kinds of steps you can live up to. I started here. I'm only measuring two or three things. Again, pick and choose. You cannot be all things to all people. Keep it simple, keep it doable. If you only have 5 people in the company, don't go and make a statement that we're going to be completely, carbon free. But say, we're very careful when we hire drillers, our blasters, our teams, that they use the best fuel, or they have proper exhausts on their equipment. That's enough when you're starting, to show that you're accountable for your behavior and you're taking steps, you're aware, and you're moving forward. And because of that legislation in place, like you said, other company, and we're seeing it, I mean, it's happening, where people are looking to Canada because we have all these incredible assets and ability and capacity, and we have this legal framework that, I mean, we'll still have to see what the teeth look like on it,
sure.
like anything else, but still it's pretty hefty, and the world are talking about it. I mean, I'm in Peru right now and people are talking to me about it, like, is
Mm.
this really? And I said, yeah, it's a law, it's part of our Competition Act. So those trend, we're seeing standards. So I talked about that alphabet soup 3 years ago. It's a bigger alphabet soup. The good news is so the stock exchanges will be, there's no doubt about it, um, demanding, they're asking to report on a number of different things, like diversity and at board level and all that. More and more, you're going to see stock exchanges demanding a report. The same way we have financial statements,
Mm.
we will have sustainability that's happening. It's coming. It's in Europe. Europe is driving a lot of what we do everywhere in the world. At the end of the day, they're the ones who need the renewable energy, who have the electric vehicles, who are driving that industrial revolution. I would almost say 5.0. So we need to make sure that we can deliver our goods to those markets. Sure.
Thank you for this. It's been such a pleasure. I like hearing your passion for mining, but the responsible mining, and also to hear about the progress that's happened, especially in the last 3 years. And I feel like obviously, you've had such an inside view of that. So thank you for sharing your thoughts today. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
Just look around you. Look at Canada has some amazing. I mean, we have majors, we have incredible mid tiers. Look at Torex, look at Alamo, some exploration for. We have incredible examples. We have deplorable ones, and I won't erase them because I think we need to be constantly reminded you cannot be complacent. So let's not be complacent. Let's keep growing, but let's share the passion. Let's do it right, but let's be positive and let's keep growing. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, please just reach out. I'm always here. It's such a pleasure to share.
Thank you so much, Siri.
Thank you very much, Melissa.
Thank you for tuning in to the Summit on Responsible Investment series. We hope to see you soon.